Here we go. The adrenaline of going live just never goes away. I had that adrenaline every single time we do these lives, and it's just that it just comes along with it. Have you done many lives, Joe?
TV, that kind of stuff. Talking about
Yeah.
movies.
Is there always an adrenaline for you when you do something live?
Oh yeah, yeah.
More so than because when I had you on, you've come on the show a few times, but it was before we started doing it live.
Yeah.
And loosely I say show when I call this a show. But anyway, you came on the podcast a few times and we were doing it recorded. Had Gary Kent in here with you the first time. And it
Right.
was a much different, it's a much different format. But yeah, here we are live. And I'm going to tell you, everyone, I'm really excited because sitting next to me, the guy I'm talking to, Joe O'Connell, producer, director, writer
Wrong way.
of
That way.
documentaries. Yeah, it took me a while to get used to that. Going the opposite. I always point the opposite. I'm pointing towards my curtain right now, but I'm doing it the opposite direction. But yeah, it's this way. It's that the writer, director, producer of documentaries, including Danger God and Rondo and Bob. What year Danger God? Would that have been 2018?
2018. It doesn't seem
Yeah.
that long ago to me. They take forever. They take forever to bring out into the world.
Yeah. Is that one of the hardest parts of being a producer of movie?
Yeah. And I'm on to something else. I'm finishing something else right now.
Yeah.
And COVID didn't help.
No.
COVID delayed us for a year. Film fests just ended for a good while.
Because you were here. You had this film in the can by the end of 2019, right?
Probably beginning of 2020.
Yeah. So it could have gone to screening by early 2020, which was the start of the worst of COVID. And I remember you came on early on that year and we were saying, yeah, we have all these festivals that would have been happening right now. So, but now the time is now. You've been out in the festivals with Rondo and Bob, I think since the fall, correct?
Yeah, we had one festival at the end of 2020 that I don't know if anybody was at because it was still COVID time.
Yeah.
And then after a few months, things lightened up a little bit, and we've been accepted to probably 20 festivals.
Wow.
About 5 of those never happened. Some because of COVID. Some because of other things, like there was a Corpus Christi Film Festival that never happened. But won awards, best documentary a couple of times, best of fest, best feature, which I guess is best of fest too.
Yeah.
So we've had a great reception.
Well, I'm really excited.
I'm
excited to finally get to see this, and we're going to talk about that April 16th in Seguin, Texas. A free screening. Good God. Anything free in 2022? Yes.
Well, we are asking that people bring donations for the local food bank.
That's true. That's correct. Yeah, definitely is going to be, they're going to be taking donations for the food bank, which is great. So you can do 2 really good things, support this film and then make some donations to the food bank. So April 16th, Seguin, Texas. We'll talk about that. I got Joe O'Connell, producer, director. We didn't do a show last week, but good grief. We should have done a show because I had Joe and Kirk-O-Matic in the studio a couple of times last week. You came over to use the studio, and we were all talking about the infamous slap. The slap heard all around the world, and now it's slap that's beating a dead horse.
Right.
Because it's been talked about. I mean, sports radio spent hours on this after the Monday following. Sports radio spent hours.
You got Ali in there,
Yeah, it also had the tie into Tiger Woods, of course, the Tiger Woods documentary. And people are just now starting to put up clips of other things that happened that night because there were other highlights that we never got to see. And by the way, the host did a damn good job. And some of those highlights finally started to surface today on the web of how good of a job they did. And that got kind of pushed aside, obviously, because of that slap heard all around the world internationally and in different languages that people watched the raw footage of. So we'll get into that. We'll touch upon that. That's not the whole show, but we'll touch upon that. See if Joe has any new insight on it. I know the Oscars have readjourned. The Academy has readjourned to make some decisions on how they're going to handle, if there's going to be any kind of punishment and what that might be. I know one thing they've already said. Whoopi Goldberg said, we're not taking that man's Oscar away. That's not going to happen.
Maybe they should.
I don't know. And that's something we'll talk about. Do we want to keep the Oscars from becoming the Jerry Springer show? Maybe they need to really put their foot down and do something to where that never happens again on the Academy Awards, or anytime soon, at least for another 40 or 50 years. But we'll talk about that. We got, of course, Rondo and Bob. We're going to talk about movies in general, and we're going to open the show right now with a little intro.
It's time for fun to pop. Don't make me say it again. Fun to pop, fun to pop, fun to pop. I will not say it again. Fun to pop. Okay, I lied. Fun to pop, fun to pop, fun to pop, oh, fun to pop.
Yeah, here we are for Thunderpop Extra. It is April. We're already well into April. And of course, like a typical Austin April, it's winter one day and summer the next. It's kind of the state of our weather this time of year. You never know what you're going to get. Joe O'Connell, producer, director, film writer for over 12 years with 3 publications, the Dallas Morning News, the Austin Chronicle, and the Austin American-Statesman. And by the way, Dallas Morning News, it's weird. I put more focus on, rather than the actual content of the publication, I put more focus on the name that they choose for a publication. And I've always loved newspapers that use the word morning. Like, okay, so Austin American-Statesman sounds very official. Like, oh, that sounds too serious for me.
It was the Austin American and the Austin Statesman.
Yeah, just Austin Statesman now?
No, it's called the American Statesman, but in its history, it was the Statesman was, I think, the afternoon edition, and the American was the morning edition.
Okay,
they did that kind of stuff.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
it's
trivia.
Austin Chronicle, I think it kind of has an edge to it, so it fits that publication. I feel like it should have a little bit of an edge to it. But but newspapers that use morning, that's my jam. It feels inviting. Feels like I want to start my day with that publication. Dallas Morning News. I love that name. Now, I don't expect you to comment on your past employers' choosing of their names, but that's just my take. I love morning newspaper that uses the word morning in the title. Don't know why I thought to bring that up, but
all right.
Maybe I should do a blog just on the naming of newspapers. And the ones that have the better names, and the ones that, think about the ones that didn't make it. Maybe it had something to do with the name. Chicago has 2. Does Chicago still have 2 newspapers?
I'm not sure.
They had the competing newspapers for years.
Yeah, most cities no longer have the competition. In San Antonio, the San Antonio Light bought the San Antonio Express News and shut itself down, which I thought was wild.
That is wild.
And that's 20 years ago now.
Yeah. So over 2 decades ago. Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's nowadays, things get acquired in media all the time. Even in satellite radio, there were the 2 competing, Sirius and XM, and then Sirius, I guess, bought XM and became Sirius XM, just kind of merged the 2 together. Sometimes they do keep, Facebook bought Instagram, but they didn't shut Instagram down. They just kept it. They kept that going as its own thing. They just have control over it now. So anyway, I know this is a horse that's been beaten into the ground, but you, having been a film writer for a number of years, I know we talked about it last week. I had to have you kind of just beat it a little more into the ground one more time for everyone. The slap heard around the world at the Oscars, which has now been I guess almost 2 weeks ago.
Right.
When that happened. The slap heard around the world. What do you think about it today versus where you were with it a week ago when we had you over here at the studio.
Well, you and I talked about it, and I thought Chris Rock was genius.
Yeah.
He totally handled that situation perfectly. He just kind of like made fun of the situation itself, and didn't confront, the actual slap. My take now is I think that they should take the Oscar away.
So
And
So
I
you
do.
say all the way, definitely take the Oscar away.
The symbol anyway. Take Harvey Weinstein's Oscar away.
Yeah.
The guy was convicted, right?
Yeah.
Take his Oscar away.
He didn't get his Oscar taken away.
No.
He still has it.
Because that's the argument against it is, well, you didn't do it to these other people. Do it to them.
Right.
Well,
and look at the Bill Cosby situation. Of course, that's a much different situation. The crime is much more harsh. So
I don't think he won any Oscars for Leonard Part, whatever it was.
No. Did you have to watch that movie? Well, you probably that's before you were in film writing, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think I would have refused.
I remember when that was in the theaters because it came out around the same time as Eddie Murphy's Raw. And so my parents used to drop me and my brother off at the movie theater when we got old enough, and we would go bouncing from screen to screen. We'd go see one movie, but if we were there early, we would peek in on something that maybe we weren't supposed to watch because of the rating. But I remember going in to Leonard Part 6 and seeing all I needed to see was about 3 minutes, and we quickly regretted sneaking into that theater. In fact, we were really, that was so traumatizing. We may never have snuck in another theater after that. It was like punishment for doing that. But we ended up also sneaking into Raw, which was another deal because it was shown at the same time. I think we were there to see. Well, we were there to see something more family oriented. But we did sneak into Raw and that was something that was a much different experience for us. Hearing that level of raw comedy at our age. But
he was in his prime.
Thought it was hilarious. I mean, that was a much different experience. Thought it was some of the funniest stuff I'd ever seen at that point in my life. But Leonard Part 6 I thought was for tax write-offs. I said, this has got to be for a tax write-off the studio. Because they couldn't have been serious about that film. I'm sure it's been spoofed by all the spoofers. Some really good spoofs have been done on it. But Bill Cosby had his trophy stripped. Not Oscar, of course, as we mentioned, but he had some stuff that he had won over the years that had been taken away from him. So it has happened before. It happens more in sports than any other area because, like the Heisman Trophy being taken away from the running back from USC not too long ago, which he ended up getting back, I think. Reggie Bush.
Yeah, and Pete Rose is not in the Baseball Hall of Fame. I'm not a baseball fan, so I don't know much about it, but he's not in, and he probably never will be.
Well, and now they're skipping over people that were thought to be steroid users. For the like Roger Clemens, and I think Mark McGuire, Sammy Sosa, people like that are getting kind of leapfrogged, which would have normally by their stats would have been considered a shoe-in for Hall of Fame. So they do it in sports. They've done it a little bit in other areas, but this is a situation where Whoopi said, no, we're not going to take that man's Oscar away.
Well,
you're saying do it. Take the Oscar away. He's already stepped down from the Academy, from his role with the Academy. Would you put a suspension on a number of years that he couldn't be nominated?
I hadn't thought of that. Maybe
that was one of the things I heard that was his possible suggested idea was that they wouldn't take his Oscar away, but he would be much like, again, sports where they put a sanction on a college football team and they can't be eligible for a national championship. So do you think, is Will Smith too big to cancel? Like, was the offense not big enough to cancel him because of his level of celebrity? This is a guy who is very powerful in Hollywood. He's not just an actor. He's an executive producer. He produces TV shows, movies. He has Cobra Kai, which is a huge show that he owns a piece of that show. He also has the Bel Air reboot on Peacock that he executive produces also. So he's a wheeler and dealer in Hollywood. Is he just too big to cancel? Is he gonna just bounce back from this pretty quick?
I don't know. I mean, I think that that one hit messed up the perception we have of him so much.
Yeah.
Those PR people had worked for decades to make him into that person, that nice guy.
Yeah.
And suddenly he's not a nice guy. So, it's interesting how stuff can change.
Just instantly. I mean, you look at some other people that did something really and got them in trouble really quickly, like the Roseanne tweet from a few years ago that got her show, basically her taking off her own show, and the show was rebranded as a result of that. But that was something that was kind of a paper trail with her already, with her tweeting and having kind of a questionable history with her tweets and her opinions on certain things. So there wasn't like a huge 360 there, like there was with the Will Smith thing, like you were saying.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of difference there. I mean, I've seen celebrities snap before. I saw an interview with Jerry Seinfeld years ago with Larry King, where he snapped on Larry in the middle of an interview. What appeared to be him snapping on Larry King, because Larry King made some comment. Larry King, was later years, he was a legend, but in his later years, he kind of had his bad days and good days, and on TV. And I know he made a comment. He said something like Seinfeld show, like he would talk like this. The Seinfeld show was on for X amount of 8 years, and then it was canceled. How did that feel, Jerry? And of course, it was not canceled. Jerry just decided to stop doing it. And Jerry got really pissed off at him. And he said, Larry, and he said, it really looked like he snapped on him. And it serves a little bit of the ego there. Like, don't you say that I was canceled. I wasn't canceled. The show wasn't canceled. So I've seen celebrities snap. Of course, the physical contact is a much more extreme thing.
Yeah. And there is so much control of the message. And the people, I have come to realize that the people who are the big celebrities are control freaks. So, I interviewed Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah.
Like 3 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
And I knew I had to ask that question that he didn't want me to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked it in kind of a different way, but he was very controlling of his message. He did eventually answer for me, but he also had what he wanted me to write about.
Yeah.
And he was in control of that message completely. And so I think a lot of them are that way.
Mm-hmm.
Will Smith got off message. We're not supposed to see behind the curtain to who the real person is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if it was a lack of taking a day off that made him finally snap and show that side of him that had been, like you said, they'd been able to conceal for the most part over the years, or if it was the emotions that had gotten worked up from the experience of being nominated and probably knowing that he was got a good chance to win.
He's got a weird personal life too.
There's that stuff too. There's the infamous, his wife has that her own podcast and show, and they did a whole roundtable about where the whole entanglement.
I saw a bit of that. It was very strange.
Yeah, so there's a whole thing, and they've been kind of rumors and stories that were wrapped around them having I guess what has been said, that they've had an open relationship, and different people and parties that have had entanglements possibly because of the open relationship. So I don't know. There's his kids now are also very much in the spotlight. So it's not just him and his wife now, it's the whole family that are very much in the spotlight. I know his son's on social media quite a bit. Is a bit of a star himself, has been in movies. So that brings on a whole new thing. We saw what happened to the Osbournes when they all became famous.
Except for one.
That's true. The one that chose not to be a part of the TV stuff.
People have forgotten she exists.
Yeah. And she seems to have been the one that's had the most private life.
Yeah.
Where the other ones went through their own struggles as a result of being thrown into this, level of fame. And in the Hulk Hogan situation, same thing too, with his son, his wife, how everything just went chaos when they all became famous, and not just the Hulk Hogan.
Fame is just so fascinating. I've spent the last 2 years working on a book. That's my COVID deal.
Yeah.
Rondo, Bob Dunn, and getting it on the tour, the festival tour. But I've been telling the story of the Ross sisters, and people can look them up on YouTube and see the video of them doing contortion. they were contortionists, and they worked their butts off and traveled everywhere. And they met guys and married guys who also were very driven. And one of the things that I got out of that was just that whole notion of, is it worth it? You know,
Wow.
you have all these people who are quitting jobs now because they decided it's not worth it on that level. But for the Ross sisters, it was like, is this worthwhile? And their mother broke a movie contract. They had like a 5-picture deal, and their mother broke it because she thought it wasn't good enough.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, strange stuff.
And I heard that book's pretty epic. I know you gave at least a synopsis to Kirk-O-Matic.
I gave him the whole story. Yeah.
Yeah, you gave the whole story. He's like really excited about it. Would that have been something you would have done as a documentary had it not just been too
expensive?
Would have been too expensive to do, right?
Though there are young female contortionists around now.
Yeah.
Who could play it, could play the roles. I think it will be done at some point.
As a scripted story?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. I think it can be done. When we did Rondo and Bob, my inspiration for a lot of what I did was Becoming Bond, the George Lazenby documentary. And that's a guy who just quit. You know, he was offered, he did Bond in one film, was offered a multi-picture deal, lots of money, and he said no. And I found that fascinating.
That is a pretty fascinating story too. And a lot of people no idea about him.
Yeah.
Because of how fast he was in and how fast he was out. I'm sure there's other people that also are that same, you know, from music and movies and television had very similar type of situation where they got they were just too much for them and got out fairly quickly. And
or they just want to play the game, you know? Yeah,
that too. Yeah, for different reasons. I saw, we just watched the Sex and the City sequel series. My wife wanted to watch it, so we watched it. And there was one scene though that really did stand out to me. It wasn't nearly as good as the original. A lot of people have already talked about online, but it still had its moments. When it was good, it was really good, and when it was a train wreck, it was a train wreck. But there was one particular part, one scene where one of the characters said something that was really interesting. It was very profound. How you think that you go for something that is your dream and your goal, and if you don't go for it, you're going to have all these regrets. So you go and you pursue that. So like for some people, they chose and this is in many stories, and some people you can find a way to balance and do both. But some people chose family, settling down, having the kids, when they could have, if they had made the left turn, they could have gone to Hollywood, or they could have gone into whatever their version of stardom was going to be, New York, Broadway, whatever, and taken that route. And they would have given up that staying in their town, having the family, doing something more normal. And in the case of the Sex and the City character, she was talking about like being just a lawyer or going into like a high level, like corporate, like, you know, so, and how there was less work-life balance. And she said, you know what I found is no matter what you do, you always have, what if I'd done that instead? You know, the person that goes the Hollywood stardom route makes it, is going to look back and say, oh, maybe I should have gone for the simple life. And the person that goes for the simple life is always going to look back at I really wish I had not wasted my talent and gone to Hollywood or whatever it was their dream.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty profound. And it's like, I could see that. I totally see that there's always going to be the questioning what you did, no matter what you do. But I can't wait to read that book. How long till you think you'll have it to where people will be able to find it?
I'm in a program called the Book Project out of the Lighthouse Writers Workshop in Denver, and I'm turning in my first draft to my mentor in about 2 weeks. So, and then it will go through revisions, and then it will go to a second reader. So it'll be a while. I mean, it's a slow process. It's much like, it's in very many ways like what I did with Rondo and Bob. Only I'm more doing it by myself. There aren't other people helping me. I have an MFA in creative writing, and I teach creative writing. I feel like I got into making these films because I wasn't finishing the books. So, and the difference with the film was that I had somebody else there with me working with me on it.
Yeah.
And Kirk Hunter and I, sitting down there at the editing table and just doing it.
There's Kirk there.
Yeah, we had a rented office. We got on each other's nerves, occasionally yelled at each other. Hey, there he is. But we got it done. And I try to set up situations where I force myself to finish things. And so I don't know if I'm giving you even the answer to the question you asked, but that's kind of the deal. And so I will finish. I'm almost done. I mean, I'm really at the last chapter, which is an important one. It's a weird mix of research and creative writing, because it will read like a novel, mostly, but it'll be based very much on facts. So, and as far as when, I don't know when it will reach the reader. It'll be a while yet.
Documentary takes a little bit longer in process, though, than doing a book.
Yeah, and like Rondo and Bob, I had the notion of what the story was about, but we would be going along, and like, for instance, we interviewed one guy about Bob Burns, and he said, "Did Bob ever tell you this story about when he saw a man almost die?" And I said, "Oh, well, we got to film that now, don't we?" And so, you have to marshal all the resources, get actors, find a location, do all that stuff, get vintage cars, which is what we always end up having to do for our old scenes, and just putting it all together. And I write the script.
And that was the biggest difference between this second documentary and your first one, Danger God, the Gary Kent story, was that you recreated a lot of the story. You used actors, you brought them, you scripted the scenes, you did reenactments.
Yeah, we did reenactments because they're both dead. Rondo Hatton and Bob Burns are both dead. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But it's weird because we reenacted some stuff that I didn't write. And we got one weird review where the guy said, "This scene sounds like it's straight out of a bad 1940s gangster movie." And it's because it was written in the 1940s by the guy it's a recreation of an interview that was done with Rondo Hatton. And we used the actual words from the interview, which were goofy. But that wasn't me. And we did the same thing with Bob Burns. We had raw footage of Bob Burns talking in an interview for the very first Texas Chainsaw Massacre documentary. And instead of using Bob Burns in it, because we used our actor so often, I said, let's just recreate it with the actor. But they're all Bob Burns' words.
Yeah.
And
you built that you all had someone go and build that face, that mask for the actor to wear.
Yeah, amazing. Paul Smith, who had worked with Bob. Kirk knew him, and we got lucky because I don't think we could have done the film, in anything but a laughable way without that.
Yeah.
And
you still have a version of the mask that you've taken around to the film festivals.
Right. Two.
Yeah.
Two.
Two of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's more.
Kirk has been a stand-in and worn it at some of the appearances.
More than once. Yes.
Yeah. And he has that kind of the stature where it kind of works for him.
He's a man. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great.
But your answer to your question is it is very different. And I hesitate to even call it a documentary.
Yeah.
I think of it as more as a biodoc is my term for it, because half of it is a feature film and half of it is traditional documentary. So, the challenge for us when we were putting this thing together, I had like color-coded Post-it notes on the wall of our editing office. There was one color for Bob, one color for Rondo. Some were half and half because they had both of them in there. And I would rearrange them all the time. I think I drove Kirk crazy with it because it had to be to where this is a film about both Bob Burns and Rondo Hatton. There are people who want a lot of Rondo, and there are people who want a lot of Bob.
Yeah.
We had to have it to where you will never say you're watching a bunch of Bob and you think, where's Rondo? At that point, it needs to switch. So we had to do that kind of thing. It becomes a bit of a collage.
In Hollywood, they do a lot of, nowadays, especially, they do a lot of focus groups. I've been in focus group. I'm not supposed to say what it was for.
Yeah.
But I'll just say it was TV. I did some TV focus group stuff. But I know they focus group stuff. Do you ever run your docs by people in your inner circle to get feedback, or do you not like to do that because you get too many chiefs in the kitchen?
We haven't really done that. We do test prints, test run of the DCP when we do that. And that's when people first saw it. And I don't think there are a lot of changes from that point.
Yeah.
So no, we just kind of went with it.
Yeah.
That's the difference. The book I will have to revise over and over again.
Yeah.
We had to cut. That's the painful thing with doing a film, is that you end up with a 2-hour film. That's not too bad, but we had to cut 20 minutes out of that, and there's a lot of stuff that we would have liked to have had in there. I'm a completist. I want everything in there.
Yeah.
But then you realize that you have to stick to the focus of the film, and the focus is really Bob Burns was a creative genius who created the look of horror, but he felt that he was ugly on the inside. And Rondo Hatton was ugly on the outside and was a perfectly normal, happy guy inside. He was an all-American kid. And so Bob was obsessed with him. And that's, we were finishing up Danger God, and Kirk was my editor. I called him in late in the process, and he started showing me footage of Bob Burns. And, I started thinking about it. And then he showed footage of Gary Kent and Bob Burns, and both walk in the room at an event that Bob did at a blood bank.
Yes.
I said, did I walk in next? He said, you did. Because I was interviewing Bob Burns. It's when I met him. Yeah. And at that event, he gave me a script called Rondo and May, which was a love story about Rondo Hatton that he'd written. And while it's not something we adapted for the film, it has a big influence in what we were trying to do. We weren't just doing a Bob Burns documentary or a Rondo Hatton documentary. We were doing both at the same time.
What year would that have been? That blood bank event that you were the footage? When
I
would
think
that have been?
Year 2000.
Around 2000.
Yeah, it was when I first started my column in the Austin American-Statesman. Yeah. And I came there looking for a column idea. Yeah. And I talked to Bob Burns. Bob Burns was trying to get me to talk about a film a script he'd written and he planned to direct that never happened. It was a horror thing he was going to set in Seguin. Which
we'll get to that Seguin event because that has a tie-in to Seguin. No, Bob Burns, you mentioned there, and what a synchronicity that is. People talk about synchronicity. That's synchronicity as can be. With the you coming in after your first two movies, subjects coming in ahead of you. Did you know Gary already by that time?
I knew Gary. I had interviewed him.
Yeah,
written a couple of articles about him.
Yeah, so you knew each other. And did you know Bob already?
I didn't know him at all.
You didn't know him at all at that point.
I met him that day.
So that's the day you made him. So Bob, for people that might be Rondo, that are well aware of Rondo because of his cult following and having he's. I'm gonna ask you about Svengoolie because my parents are big Svengoolie fans. Let me just ask you about Svengoolie now. They watch him every Saturday night, and my Kirk-O-Matic, our friend Kirk-O-Matic, watches him pretty regularly too and records him. So Svengoolie being kind of the guy in 2020s for B movies, kind of the all-knowing. Was he approached for an interview for this documentary on Rondo and Bob?
No, we didn't talk to him. We talked to Joe Bob Briggs.
Yeah.
Joe Bob was coming through town, and we just arranged it. It was very strange. We were at the Alamo Ritz, which is no longer with us. We were in some kind of labyrinth back room there where you could hear the movies in the background behind us, and just talked to him for a while. And he knew Bob Burns well. I mean, he was a fan. So yeah, no Svengoolie.
What's that?
Would have been cool.
Yeah, would be cool. I know he's in Chicago, so he's in a different, different area, market stuff.
Yeah.
And of course he's run movies on his Saturday night program, and I know this because my parents being big fans of his, that have Rondo Hatton, featured Ron. He's run some movies that were Rondo Hatton features on his Saturday night show. So that's pretty interesting. Now, for people that might not know about Bob Burns, that maybe they know about Rondo Hatton, what's something you could tell them about Bob Burns and refer them to go check him out?
Yeah.
Other than your documentary, of course.
Right. Bob was raised in Austin,
mm-hmm.
and he went to the University of Texas. He was an actor in high school at Austin High. We had a scene we recreated on the actual stage that he would have performed on in high school. It's gone now. It's the ACC Rio Grande campus, which has been gutted and totally redone. That stage does not exist.
Wow.
So he was an actor in high school, and he got a drama degree from UT.
Mm-hmm.
But while he was there, he was also doing graphic design, and he just was a jack of all trades. And for Tobe Hooper, he had done the press material for Tobe's first film, Eggshells.
Mm-hmm.
And Tobe Hooper said he saw that Bob could create anything. He was kind of famous for that, making anything out of thin air. Mm-hmm. And so he got him to do the set design for Chainsaw Massacre. And Bob, after Chainsaw, was reluctant to continue doing art direction, basically collecting all the stuff and creating the look, because they got screwed around financially.
Mm.
And he had people come looking for him. They saw Chainsaw Massacre, and they said, "I want that guy for our film." The first was The Hills Have Eyes.
Mm-hmm.
They came looking for him, and then the Howling, for The Howling, they came looking for him, and then Reanimator. And he created this look. He had a philosophy, which was that the art direction should be invisible. You should never be thinking about how, this guy did cool stuff.
Yeah.
You should instead be afraid and find this to be incredibly real. Reanimator, he created an entire hospital set.
Mm-hmm.
And Stuart Gordon, the late Stuart Gordon, we talked to him before he died, said that people would often ask him where that hospital was.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to tell them, Bob Burns just created it, but it looks so real that you assume that it's a real thing. So he's most famous for that. And he did a lot of other films too,
mm-hmm.
Microwave Massacre, all kinds of weird films. He kept doing it. And he was the star of Confessions of a Serial Killer, which is based on Henry Lee Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing art direction for the film. They lost their lead, and they looked out the window and they saw Bob making bloody stuff, bloody photos that would be used in the film. And he was gleeful about it. They said, "Let's use him. Let's make him the star." And they didn't know he was an actor.
Yeah. And
he puts out a really incredible performance in a very creepy film.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing how those things come to be of just random things like that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing also Texas Chainsaw. We were talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, how that has just continued on and on over the years. Has had new life.
Yeah, and rabid fans, just incredibly rabid fans.
Yeah.
One of the things we had to make sure with Rondo and Bob was that we didn't make it into a chainsaw film, because it's very easy to do that.
Yeah,
because we've got a fan base for this film from chainsaw fans, obviously.
Oh yeah.
My favorite moment in the entire film was we were at a convention in Bastrop, and all of these stars of the different chainsaw movies were up on the stage being interviewed. And a guy came up to ask a question dressed as Leatherface. And the cast members just die laughing because they see the ridiculousness of what we're doing. The veil was pulled back a little bit.
Yeah.
Just my favorite scene in the entire film.
Well, and what other IP in the horror genre has a following that's that loyal for that long stretch of time. I mean, there's all these other IPs that have put out several movies and TV shows, but I don't know if any of them have the passionate fan base that Texas Chainsaw Massacre has. I mean, you look at, Friday the 13th, Hellraiser, Freddy Krueger. Maybe, I mean, Freddy Krueger in pop culture is pretty significant, but as far as having that passion, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can think of anything else.
Yeah.
And maybe before Texas Chainsaw was probably Psycho or something from Alfred Hitchcock's, library of films, but definitely, in, the last 40 years, I can't think of anything else.
It's not going away either.
No.
The new movie got kind of mixed reviews.
Yeah.
But there will be another one,
And probably not 2 or 3 years down the road, they will come they'll come with a different approach.
Yeah.
And it'll get another look, and they'll nail it again at some point.
I was on the set of the remake in 2003, 2004.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really weird because they filmed it in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And they filmed it at a shut down, some kind of state institution that's out 969, FM 969.
Yeah.
And down the hill was a pauper's graveyard. And they're filming like in the middle of this stuff. It was incredible. Mm-hmm. And then down below the hill was a prison. So it just all had bad juju to it,
Yeah. Yes.
You want for a horror film.
You want that. I mean, obviously one of the creepiest movies ever made for me. I don't even like talking about it. Exorcist, and the stories that go around Exorcist is probably a documentary all on its own. And I'm sure it's been a documentary. I'd be surprised if it hasn't. Yeah. Surprised it hasn't. All the stories. So you got Seguin coming up April 16th that we were talking about at the beginning of the show. And that's a free event, but also you're going to be taking donations for the local food bank,
right?
As an entry. So
and there's a reason we're in Seguin.
What's that?
There's a reason we're in Seguin. There's a reason we're there. When we began the documentary, it's the first place we went because Bob Burns had decided to sell his property in Austin and South Austin and buy a house in downtown Seguin.
Yeah.
And that's where he lived his last years.
Oh, wow.
And he was very involved in the community there.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I talked to the people there, really the very first people we interviewed, I said, yeah, we're going to do a screening here when it's done. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of cool to actually be doing that,
Yeah, that is cool. Is there a theater there, or is it going to be just held at a place?
There's a couple of theaters in Seguin. This is the Palace Theater.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Old-timey theater.
Oh, yeah. I saw a picture. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be cool. And one of the weird things that Bob Burns did, he could make anything, and he made costumes. And he made this creation, which was the Burns family band. It was him in the middle and his two sisters, Powder Burns and Heart Burns, on the sides. They're mannequins. You have to.
I wish I had that photo.
And he performed this with a group called the Kingsbury Opry.
Mm-hmm.
Kingsbury is a suburb of Seguin, a little community outside of Seguin. And the old folks would show up on Friday night, and it was a covered dish supper. No smoking, no drinking, no cussing. Those are the only rules. And you could get up and perform. Everybody was welcome to get up and perform. And so Bob started performing there. For the film, our craziness, we decided to recreate that. So we found the actual costume, and we had Paul Smith, the guy who did the mask, we had him kind of renovating it on the spot. We used spray paint and everything on it, and fixed it up and filmed it with our actor. And so and at the Seguin event at 6 p.m., April 16th, the Kingsbury Opry will perform, and the film will follow at 7 o'clock.
Oh, wow. That's fun.
Yeah. So it's kind of a real homage to Bob.
Yeah.
And there will be people there that knew him. So
locals and they will
Bob was convinced that this is a big theme of the film, Bob was convinced that he was incapable of love and that he had no friends.
Yeah.
Where Rondo had many friends. Everybody loved Rondo.
Mm-hmm.
And when Bob died, spoiler alert, he killed himself at his house in Seguin. And there was a memorial service in Seguin, and tons of people came because he had tons of friends. And, he just couldn't see it. He couldn't understand that people cared about him.
Would that have been after around one time? Around what time was he in Seguin? Would that have been after 2005?
He died in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
So he was there for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah,
so not a real long time compared to Austin. But,
but he made a huge mark there.
He did.
In the Seguin area.
Yeah. I'm talking to a San Antonio Express News writer about that whole aspect of it tomorrow.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Yeah. There could be a lot of people from San Antonio as well. Its proximity. It might be coming out there as well. That's exciting. I hope we have enough room for everyone.
That will be a problem I will like.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Get some video of that, and you can that'll create a lot of excitement.
Yeah.
Going forward. So talking about for people that can't make it to Seguin, Texas, maybe they're too far, can't get there on the 16th, or whatever other reasons might be going on. And I don't know what it could be that could be keeping you from going to Seguin, Texas on April 16th. If you live in the state of Texas, you have no excuse. But
that's right.
But for people that will be unable to make it, that were like, damn it, I really want to see this film. I've been waiting to see Rondo and Bob. When am I going to get to see Rondo and Bob? What can you tell them? What can you tell them?
Yeah, we're still doing some festivals, some film festivals. We're at the I'm forgetting the name of it, Crimson Screen Festival in Charleston, South Carolina. In a couple of weeks, we're at a really big festival called Creep Fest in Kansas City.
Yeah, and
then we will be released streaming. We have a distributor. They're releasing us in early June, so it'll be on all the streaming services.
Yes,
so it'll be out there. Yeah.
There you go.
I hope to have an Austin screening before this happens. And
yeah,
if you have ideas of a place for that. I just want to do something to have Bob's friends there.
Yeah,
we've screened everywhere. We screened in Texas. We screened at Texas Frightmare in Dallas, Houston Horror Film Festival. But we have, and we shot a lot of it in Taylor, and we did something similar to Seguin there, playing at the local movie theater. And we have been all over, but we have not done Austin. So a lot of people may not have heard of it.
Well, there's the Austin Film Society. I don't know what they've got going on their calendar, but put that seat out there. I know they're back open. I've seen them have some stuff show up here lately online. So I don't know. Fingers crossed you get the Austin screening. Yeah, I know you would have had Austin screening by now already had it not been for the COVID delay that ensued. I know you all went up for a road trip up to the Dallas festival that you were in a few months back. Yeah. Which one was that?
Texas Frightmare. Texas Frightmare Week.
Yeah, you did. What's Texas Frightmare? Were you all able to go travel to any of the other ones?
We've been to Hot Springs, Arkansas. Been to Horrible Imaginings, which is in Santa Ana, California, one of the top horror film festivals in the world. We went, Gary Kent and I went to Tucson, the Tucson Terror Fest.
Yeah, I saw. Okay, I remember
so
that.
We've done some traveling. Some I wish I'd gone to. We won awards at a few that I didn't go to.
Yeah,
Atlanta Horror Film Festival. We were Best Documentary, and the Midwest Monster Fest. I got a really cool thing because that's the one we were best feature film. So
no, that's great. Now, would you consider yourself to be superstitious at all?
Somewhat.
So I can be, but the thing is, if you had started noticing, and this is not what happened, of course, but if you had started noticing that you were winning the awards at all the festivals you didn't go to,
Oh,
would you have stopped going to festivals as a superstitious move?
that sounds like a good excuse to not have to go. We
Save
had
you on
fun.
travel.
We had fun traveling around.
Yeah, it's fun. Hot Springs sounds like it would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a cool place, and
Yeah.
we went to the baths and all that. We had a good time.
Kirk get in in the springs?
He did.
Kirk-o-matic?
He did. Yeah.
That must have been quite a sight. There's Kirk there on the camera with the flannel shirt.
This is us filming the scene where Rondo met his wife.
Okay. Yeah.
That's May, Rondo and May.
In the
This
red
is
there.
downtown in Taylor, Texas, and we did this this was very early in the production too.
Mm-hmm.
We did this on a Sunday night late because I figured there would be no one in town, that it would be dead.
Yeah.
Instead, there was an endless parade of giant pickup trucks
Oh my gosh.
with glass pack mufflers coming down the street and revving it. It was crazy.
Well, you said that was in Taylor, correct? Taylor, Texas, near a downtown area.
Yeah, downtown. That's right downtown. The art gallery has since closed, but we use an art gallery.
They closed the art gallery. Didn't make it.
Yeah, the art gallery didn't make it. Though Taylor's booming because of Samsung.
Well, last time we went down there, which was probably 2019, that we were downtown Taylor, it was really starting to really popping down there.
Did you see the the Texas Beer Company?
Well, we went to a wine play, like a wine tasting.
Oh,
in
that's
downtown,
around the corner, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, in downtown Taylor, which I think might have been. Yeah, I think I did see the beer, but yeah, we went there for barbecue, but we ended up going and checking out because we were amazed at all this new stuff that had popped up in Taylor, and we ended up at the wine tasting.
Taylor was so good for us because we could find things, like I talked about that scene where Bob Burns sees a guy die.
Yeah.
I had to figure out how to do this. He gets hit by a car. He sees a guy get hit by a car. And so I had to figure out how to do that. And so I found a street that was not a city street, that was considered an easement. And so I didn't have to get insurance to do it, because I don't want to have to do insurance if I can avoid it.
Yeah.
And it was up front of a bed and breakfast. We shot some stuff inside the bed and breakfast. Across the street is the old Taylor High, the old high school that's been redone into all kinds of cool stuff. And they owned the street, and they gave us permission to use it. We had already shot there. We recreated a scene of the Texas Tower shooting in 1969. Both Bob Burns and Hooper were there that day. So we did ambitious stuff.
Yeah.
Y'all
really went for it. You mentioned the back behind you that's green screened in black and white there with your the actor that was in your film playing Rondo with the mask, and you said it's a green screen of a green screen. You were telling me before we started the show.
Yeah. Kirk and I had a little editing office, and it had a boardroom, and we would shoot a lot of things in that boardroom. And this is Rondo sitting at the boardroom table with a green screen behind him. And I just purchased some footage, some old footage of a newsroom, and we slugged it behind it. It worked out really well. This is one of the last things we did. It's kind of like you don't want to end.
Yeah.
And so you keep finding new stuff to do. And that seemed, and the guy next to us also makes movies in that office.
Yeah.
And he had a green screen. So we said, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's play with the green screen. So it turned out pretty well. So it's seconds on screen, but it makes a great image.
It looks cool. Much easier also than recreating that whole office.
Oh, sure.
And bringing in extras, I would assume, and building that whole. We don't have Bob Burns to do that.
Right.
If Bob Burns was here, damn it, he could have done his sets for his own documentary.
Yeah. If I make another film, it'll be a lot of green screen, I think. It seems easy.
I see a lot of documentaries now use animation for reenactments, which has worked in some of the ones I've seen, or they'll have some kind of moving drawing or something, and they try to get through their reenactments doing it that way. But yeah, it's always good to see someone really try to do something unique and different. So I'm really excited to see what came of, y'all's ambitions and doing the reenactments and be fun to see.
Yeah,
Because really getting a hybrid, you're getting a like you said, you're getting a documentary, but you're also getting
it's a feature film.
a feature film.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
almost like the next step needs to be a pure feature film. I kind of
Yeah.
like I have a couple of things that I would like to do.
Mhm.
One being the Rondo Hatton of Austin. I would like
Oh,
to do a short film about the Rondo Hatton of Austin.
focusing on that aspect of his life just during that time.
No, a guy who was
Oh, okay.
acromegaly and was a Rondo Hatton type character in Austin.
Oh, okay. An actual Austin's version of that.
Yeah, his name was Hans Hartkopf,
Mhm.
and he went to the same high school as Bob Burns.
Interesting.
Went to Austin High, and he was a race car driver, and he had a big mechanic shop on Barton Springs Road, where the Restaurant Row is now there.
Mm.
And he was huge. Rondo was not huge,
Yeah.
because when you get acromegaly, the condition he has is acromegaly,
Yeah.
which is a pituitary gland tumor, and it causes the hands, feet, and face to continue to grow. It kind of sparks it. But if you get it young, Rondo Hatton got it when he was probably about 19. If you get it younger, your entire body grows. And the guy in Austin actually was huge,
Wow.
and apparently a very nice guy. And I have spoken to some of his family, and that's something I would like to do. I don't know when we do it, but maybe short film. I don't know if I can full length one.
Short film. Now you were mentioning how you hate to get rid of not use stuff when you're filming. You have all this extra stuff you really loved, didn't want to get rid of it. Is this going to get a DVD release like you did with Danger God? Because I know you did the DVD also with Danger God, and if it did happen, could that be an area where you could use that footage?
Maybe so. I mean, we have no plans for that right now. Our distribution deal is just streaming.
Okay.
So, and maybe we'll do that ourselves. Do a Blu-ray that has a bunch of extras on
you
it.
could do that, a separate deal with that on its own.
Yeah. There's some interesting Austin people we talked to who didn't make the final cut.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be kind of cool. And smaller films that Bob worked on in Austin. But there was a point where we just had to slash away.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think documentaries should be 60 minutes long or 55 minutes.
Right.
We're an hour and 40 minutes or 100 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's about as long as I can see it being. I think that's where people's patience ends.
Mm.
We did cool stuff. And one thing that I never talk about enough is one of the nice things about doing a film is you can choose what the soundtrack's going to be.
Yeah.
And I love this song by a guy named Ferris Narala, and it's called Problematica. Look it up. Mm-hmm. It's just a beautiful Beatles-esque type pop song.
Nice.
And I wanted it for the credits. And so I arranged it, and we ended up having 10 songs in the movie by Ferris.
Wow.
And I think he's just really incredible. I'm a big fan of his brother, Salim Narala, who's a music producer and wonderful artist in Dallas. So kind of cool to be able to do that. And so if you see me at the screening during the credits, you will see me sitting there singing along to the songs. Because I just love it. And I love the opportunity to have that in there.
Well, we may need a soundtrack release then before the DVD.
That might be more difficult because there's all the flights involved.
Yeah, the music stuff's a lot harder. Yeah, to get distribution and do it because all the other people involved.
We do have a soundtrack album for Danger God that I think nobody has.
Wow.
It's really just the tracks from the background along with Gary Kent singing.
Yeah.
Anybody hears this and wants one of those, send me $10 and I'll send you, find a way to contact me.
Okay.
Bob.com or dangergod.com. And I'll send you a soundtrack.
You heard that, folks? If you want the Danger God soundtrack, get a hold of Joe O'Connell online.
It's worth it for the 2 songs sung by Gary Kent, written by Gary Kent.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm about to send you. I'm gonna Venmo you.
All right.
I'm about to Venmo you. I got some film questions I want to ask you.
Okay.
I know you were not already in film journalism at this time, but you would have been around Austin, I believe, around this time.
Mhm.
I used to love reading another Austin Statesman or Austin American-Statesman entertainment writer that was around. I think that you would have crossed over with her though. TV writer Diana Holloway.
Oh, sure.
Did you ever work with her?
I was like a part-time copy editor.
Okay.
So yeah, I was around. Yeah.
I loved reading her
Great
TV.
person who is doing great stuff in retirement.
Yeah.
Both she and Ben Sargent were part of one of the early purges at the Statesman, where they got rid of all those wonderful voices. You know, it's a real shame. There's not very many of them left at this point.
She was so good. I used to love reading her TV, reviews, TV shows, and to me, I don't know if there was anyone better around that time.
Yeah, she did a good job.
She was.
And she was into it. You know, she went to those film junkets, those TV junkets, whatever they're called.
Yeah.
Upfronts, is that it?
Yeah, they had the upfronts. They still do those, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Well, that's who I learned. That's how I learned so many things in the entertainment industry back then about, things like the upfronts. I learned from reading Diana Holloway. It was TV class, reading her article every week. So
she was
I really enjoyed her. I really enjoyed her work.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to ask you about is critics in general, film critics in general, and how you were talking about how there's not very many more like her. She was kind of the end of that.
There aren't too many film critics either.
Yeah, is that dying? Is that as we know it already dead? Because it's changed so much now because you have the internet where everybody can, and I've talked to Kirkamatic about this many times, but the internet has given everybody a place that they can have their own platform, their own channel, and to some degree it's been good, and to other ways it's not. And many of the people are really, really good, by the way. There's so many talented people doing vlogs and podcasts and whatnot, reviewing TV movies in their own way. But is it just completely dead as we know it? The days of the Siskel and Ebert and all that stuff, that's just never going to happen again?
Or it'll just take another form. I don't know. It's probably harder to make a living at it.
Yeah.
These days. You know, there are movie critics for the Austin Chronicle, but the Statesman has one guy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of tough. There used to be a bunch.
Yeah, they had at least three probably at one time, right?
Yeah.
They would take, they had
great people, like Alison Maycor, who has a PhD in film and writes books about film. Chris, do you remember Chris Garcia?
Yes, he was not that many years ago, but probably 15 years back.
It's a ways back, yeah.
Yeah.
And Chris was very good at making people angry.
Yes.
And he wrote beautiful prose, and he stuck to his opinions and had great insight.
Yeah.
I don't see that kind of stuff much anymore. And it's a shame.
And before, if I'm not mistaken, before Garcia, there was a guy who was also equally as polarizing in Austin for movie reviews. Well, I believe it was Patrick Taggart.
Oh, you're going back, yeah.
I believe was his name. I remember he was the original guy that would really stir the pot when it comes to really getting people boiled up. And I think he leaned more towards serious dramatic movies. Didn't like the big blockbusters as much.
Yeah.
What's that?
He did theater as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, I didn't know that he was in. Yeah, he had done that as well. So yeah, with the movies and now Rotten Tomatoes, kind of when people talk about going for movie review, it's changed in 20 years. Where 20 years ago it was Siskel and Ebert, and now it's Rotten Tomatoes, or maybe even more than 20 years ago.
That's where I go. Yeah.
Speaking of the old tradition of movie critics, when Gene Siskel passed away, and Roger Ebert did a series of guest hosts, and he brought in a bunch of people, one local, I know that got to go on and do it. So he had a series of people and they tried out some different people. He finally landed on someone that was, as you know, was another local Chicago guy. If you had gotten called to do that gig, would you have been on the plane to Chicago? Would you have done it?
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd be freaking out too. Yeah.
Yeah. That would have been, you think you could have sparred with him, or do you think it would have been it would just been like, oh, this is someone that I've watched for years. It would have been a different dynamic for you.
It would be tough. Yeah.
Because that's what they wanted. They wanted someone to go in there and spar that could spar with him like Gene did.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked, A.O. Scott did that some, didn't he? From the New York Times.
Yeah.
And I like his reviews.
Yeah. You know what would be cool is that they did a revolving round table now, where, you know how they have these revolving round table shows, you know, like, well, I know the original version of Bill Maher's show was where he had a panel on, and I don't know if he does a hybrid version of that now where he still has a panel on his show, but he would have a panel on to talk about the current events of the day. And I know that The View is kind of the same host all the time, with a few guests to come in and out, and they do a panel roundtable. What if they had did the Siskel Ebert format, but you had two different people every week to spar over the movies that were coming out that weekend in a very Siskel and Ebert style. And you would think about the people you could get on there to talk movies.
Yeah.
And you could just look for the wildest odd couple every week that you could book to do that.
This is your future podcast.
This is the show that I want. I want to see this. It's the same format as, and I think the original Siskel Ebert was at the movies, but now it'd be something else, but it would be a very similar format, but you'd have two different people every week. Think about the different people you could get on there and have them sparring. I want this show. Cool. You're right. This might be the next project. This might be the next project to figure out how we can get this, make this happen. I'm trying to think of the comedian's name. He's got a big mouth, and he's really good at getting people stirred up. But he's a huge basketball fan, and he does TikTok videos. But he would be already immediately someone that I'd want to book for that show, because he would go on there, hearing him talk about movies. Obviously, a lot of comedians would be funny on there.
I think Kirk needs to do something like this, because he would just go off in some weird tangent.
Well. Yeah. I think a review show with Kirk. I want that now. I want a weekly review show with Kirk involved.
That would be good.
Him reviewing the movies. I mean, I've heard him, have you ever heard his story about his dad? How he would refer to movies that were the big budget blockbusters?
No.
His dad used to say these big movies that were the big budget movies. Of course, they're even more wilder now than they were then. But back then it would have been like a Michael Bay movie, or it might have been, whatever was a big blockbuster movie at the time. But he used to say they Spielberged that movie. It was Spielberged everywhere.
And his father was a theater professor at the University of Texas, so he had credentials.
Yeah.
To be able to talk about it.
So his term was they Spielberged everything in that movie. It was all explosions and lasers and buildings being split in half and everything. So would have been probably referring to movies like Die Hard. Of course, once Die Hard came out, the floodgates opened, and everybody was trying to make their own version of Die Hard.
Die Hard was good. Yeah, it was a good film.
They had Speed, which was the bus instead of the building. And then they had, I don't know, there was a bunch of them that did of course, Speed 2 was the worst idea ever, where they did a cruise ship.
Right.
And Keanu Reeves wouldn't even come back to do it because he was like, it's not speed, it's a boat.
Yeah.
It's not moving fast.
Slow speed.
What's that?
It's slow speed.
Yeah.
Or not. It's knots.
It's not. It would be slow. They should call it slow, or Speed 2 slow or something.
Yeah. Slow down.
I got one more on the Rondo Hatton, and remind everybody, April 16th in Seguin, Texas. This is going to be a fun event for a screening of the documentary. And then, of course, streaming is coming up this summer. So check your local streaming listings. It's going to be on multiple streaming platforms. That's just really exciting. But I want to ask you, anybody that is a fan of Rondo or Bob or both, something people that are diehard fans that know a lot about them, but something they might not have known about one or the other, that you'll either learn from the film or that you learn from doing research on the film, that is going to be a surprise.
Rondo was a journalist.
Yeah.
And he considered himself a writer. I actually have a copy of a script that he wrote. So he was an intellectual guy. Bob, let's see. Bob liked to tell puns,
Mm-hmm.
and often bad ones.
Mm-hmm.
He made a short film that there was a movie way back when called The Man Who Loved Women with
Yeah.
Burt Reynolds.
Yeah.
It's not a movie that particularly stands up test of time, but Bob made The Man Who Loved Inflatable Women, and he had a bunch of inflatable dolls. So
does that stand the test of time better or about the same?
it's goofy. We premiered that film in Rondo and Bob.
Wow. Okay, there's a little treat there.
Not the whole thing, but parts of it.
Because it'll be something nobody's ever seen. And
along with his unreleased film, Scream Test,
mm-hmm.
Bob Burns' film that was unreleased. We've got it in there. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, that should be a good teaser for people that we're on the kind of on the fence about coming to Seguin.
Yeah.
That should get you on.
Yeah, that's it. Come see it.
Austin Horror Society, that group.
Yeah.
Rent a bus and head down there to Seguin.
That's it.
Yeah. That's gonna be a lot of fun. Sounds like I need to get there early. I want to make sure I'm gonna have a seat.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm gonna leave early. Where should people go eat in Seguin if they want to get there early and have dinner before the movie?
I'm afraid I don't know.
I don't know either. I would have no idea, but I'm sure there's some place good to go. They're usually
stop at San Marcos and go to Herbert's Taco Hut.
Okay. Yes, I've heard of that. I think we might have gone there. It's on the side of 30. Is that right off 35?
Back in a neighborhood by Rio Vista Park.
Okay.
Marcus.
Yeah,
it's
I think
great Tex-Mex.
Yeah.
I have 3% power on my computer.
Uh-oh. Well, we got 3% of show left.
How much we have? 3%?
We got 3% of show left.
Okay.
We're gonna wrap it up because we're a little over an hour. But thank you, Joe O'Connell. April 16th. Can't wait. Rondo and Bob streaming this summer. Very excited. I'll see you out there in just under less than a week and a half, I think. I'll see you out there. Look forward to it.
And rondoandbob.com. They can find out everything about the film. Yeah,
if you want to just go ahead and look online and keep up with it. And also Danger God is out there as well. If you haven't seen Danger God, it's they can find it pretty easy, right?
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah, so you can go look up Danger God and you can figure out where you can stream that and watch that as well. So that's the story of Gary Kent, legendary Hollywood stuntman.
And B-movie legend.
B-movie legend as well. Guy. Yeah, and just a swell guy. Here in Austin, Texas. All right, everyone out there, have a great hour, day, second, millisecond. We'll see you soon. It's Thursday. It's almost the weekend. So have a good Friday, rest of your week. And where's that outro? Let's do this. Closing it out. Here it is. This is where I need the producer, Joe. Thunder Pop is a Hit the Bricks production.